take us off mute and try to record. If it's working, it's working. If it's not, I don't know.
Good evening, everybody. It is now 7 p.m. I am calling to order a joint special meeting of the Human Affairs Committee and Planning and Economic Development Committee here in the Aldermanic Chamber. Clerk, would you like to call rolls?
Yes. Alderman Lopez, Chair.
I'm here.
Alderwoman at Large, Shoshana Kelly, Vice Chair. Alderwoman at Large, Gloria Timmons.
Here.
Alderman Tim Senate is here. Alderman Chris Thibodeau.
Here.
Alderman at Large, Melbourne Moran Jr. Alderman Tyler Govea.
Here.
Alderman Derek Tebow.
Here.
Alderman Ernest Jetty. And Alderman at Large, Ben Clemens. Also joining us this evening is Bobby Bagley, Public Health and Community Services Director. I believe I saw Alderman Wilshire and Alderman Klee. Alderman Clemens has just joined us. We also have Matt Sullivan with us.
Alderman Clemens, there's a handout that's part of the thing if you want to try to grab a copy. I think Director Bagley has them. And I would also note for the record that Alderman Moran contacted me shortly before the meeting and said that he didn't think he'd be able to connect. So he would ordinarily be the chair of the Planning and Economic Development Committee. So we have the roll call. Now I guess we can move to public comment. Are there any members of the public wishing to make public comment? Just a reminder, I saw Bob stand up. Was that a no? Feel free to come up and make public comment. Just give your name and address for the record so the transcribers have it.
Here's me. Bob Keating, I live at 5 Coburn Woods, and speaking as a volunteer for the Day Cafe here on Main Street, and also as part of the Ending Homeless Committee of Harbor Care. So I'm just very appreciative of the proposal that you're going to hear tonight in regards to expanding our housing capacity for those who are homeless. And I'm particularly appreciative at a time that seems in our nation that there is some regression in terms of support, some criminalization of homelessness, and the Supreme Court decision to support that kind of effort. And day after day, and for many of you, just anybody walking in our community knows that despite all the efforts that we have made, that we remain short just for shelters. And I think this proposal is just adds to that by having a place that people can be at for 24/7. When we've got transitional housing in there, and I think the flexibility to respond to what the needs are. So when I heard it, it was almost I kind of was pinching myself. I said, "Geez, in the midst of all that's going on, that the city itself has taken that stand." So I hope that you will respond favorably to this proposal. So thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to make public comment?
Good evening. My name is Jessica Hannon Vitale. I currently live at the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter. I have to speak as someone being there. I agree with what Bob had just said. We definitely need more housing programs. But for my situation, it's a very unique one. I was a hardworking person, raised in the right family. I just happened to be working, and I had a 3-month-old baby at the time, and her biological father shook her and completely changed our lives in one day. And we really had nowhere to go. 211 pretty much laughed at us when I said the size of my family, because I have 4 other biological children, and I am recently trying to adopt my nephew, as my sister just passed. I really feel like the shelter I am in doesn't have the supports it needs. It doesn't have enough support, and not only that, but you have families mixed in with all different sorts of walks of life. So my kids are getting all different across the spectrum, personalities, issues, mental, physical, everything. And I'm not saying that they don't deserve housing as well, because they definitely do. I just feel like we need to work towards maybe being able to find more places or sites to house and have different maybe family shelters, as opposed to putting all the singles and what little family shelter we have all together. It just seems like there's a big problem with space, and that's a huge, huge factor. So I'm trying to work with as many people as I can to try to speak out on what I've gone through, try to come up with some sort of funding or something that we can do to try to change this, or maybe get more places set for homeless families like myself that are coming from good backgrounds and maybe not mentally healthy or unmentally healthy situations or drug-related situations. I think we really need to find a healthy balance between how we help the homeless, because there's a lot of different levels of needs, and we can't just put them all in one space, because it's not mentally healthy for anybody involved. And that's all I really had to say for right now. So thank you very much.
I want to express appreciation for the previous speaker. I have worked with the homeless for decades now, I guess. That makes me feel terribly old. And I have never found anybody who did not have a unique situation. But it's very easy to look at people who are unhoused or homeless as a collective, and we need to see people personifying the situation, the real people who are struggling in it. I know the Soup Kitchen has worked for years to build the program that they have, and particularly address a shortage of large-scale family shelter space. Prior to building the Spring Street shelter, we didn't really have any options for families that might have more than 2 or 3 children. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And in doing that facility, they also had to combine a number of other programs together. And I think this lays a lot of context for Director Bagley's presentation, that where we as a city rely on nonprofit organizations to provide the need in our community, we also have to rely on those nonprofits for anticipating that need, whereas a city that there's also still more need that we need to address. So Director Bagley, if you'd like to come up and make your presentation.
Good evening. Bobby Bagley, Chief Public Health Official and Director for our Division of Public Health and Community Services. First, I'd like to thank the Human Affairs and Economic Affairs Committee for allowing us to come and do this presentation jointly to the committee, just to share what our experience has been over the past, it's going on almost 2 years now, when we first started looking at our response to the increase in number of individuals who were unhoused and that had different types of situations that were being presented to us. Our teams and all of our departments over at the division, whether they interfaced with our community health department through some of the outreach efforts, our community services department through some of the work that we've been doing since COVID with our community health workers, either through our welfare department because of the assistance that's been needed to help prevent homelessness, and then to support those who needed shelter space, either in motels or other ways that we're trying to assist individuals, even to our environmental health department that would follow up at different sites if there were other issues that were related to environmental health issues, whether it was increased trash or bed bugs. All of these things have impacted the entire division, and we've been able to work with our city partners as well as community-based organizations to address this issue. For the past year, most intensively, we've focused on addressing this situation to the point where, as you're all aware, we were able to hire a housing services officer, that we need a point person to this. We even took an approach of doing this almost as if it was an emergency response with our Office of Emergency Management, taking a lead and pulling all of the departments and division heads together to mount this response. we were able to hire this new position, and we've prioritized housing instability, addressing homelessness, addressing unstable housing, and addressing the encampments. And so what you're going to hear this evening is a presentation from LaTanya Musioli, who is the Housing Services Officer, and she's going to share what the experience has been over the past at least a year, if not a year and a half, all of the efforts that have been put into place to focus on this particular issue. So I'm going to turn it over to LaTanya Musioli for the presentation. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Okay. Is there supposed to be like a clicker to go through the slides?
There is, it's in the drawer.
Also, if it doesn't click, just say click and then we'll click it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sometimes the sensor's a little picky.
All right. So we will start with our land acknowledgement. We are located on unceded and occupied land called Nadakadena, the traditional ancestral homeland of the Abenaki, Pennacook, and Wabanaki peoples, past and present. The word Nashua, or Nisawok, in Abenaki language means place of two rivers. Please pause as we acknowledge and honor these people who have been stewards of this land, water for hundreds of generations. Okay. Homelessness, as we know, is a very complex issue consisting of many variables that lead to it. These include, but are not limited to, incarceration and criminal history. Incarceration and the lack of housing to discharge to often leads many individuals into homelessness. Having a criminal record also serves as a barrier for individuals that are looking to access different housing, specifically rental housing units. When there's federal funding in place, that's a huge barrier for individuals that are looking to make the appropriate changes and move forward with their lives. Affordable housing shortages. So New Hampshire has a vacancy rate of less than 1%. So there's not much housing for people to choose from, let alone affordable. Cost burden households are households that have to spend more than 30% of their income on housing costs, such as high rent. This often requires individuals to make trade-offs between necessary items like food or medications in order to maintain their housing. And inadequate access to health care that can result in the inability to earn an income or maintain a household, which can lead to evictions. So as we try to move forward with handling the issue of housing instability and homelessness in Nashua, there are multiple municipal leads that are working on these issues. So that includes the Division of Public Health and Community Services, the Office of the Mayor, the Office of Community Development Division, Office of Emergency Management, Administrative Services Division, Public Works Division, the Nashua Police Department, Nashua Fire Department, and the Public Library. So everybody's very hands-on in these efforts, and we are working very hard to collaborate in order to help resolve this. We also have a number of community partners. We're very fortunate in Nashua to have so many community partners that are doing great work to address housing instability and homelessness. This isn't a list of everybody, but we did want to give a shout out to St. Patrick's Church. They operate the Day Cafe, as Bob had said earlier. So this is a place where our unsheltered population can go daily, Monday through Friday in the morning, to have a cup of coffee, warm up, and also connect with service providers on site. St. Joseph's Hospital has their mobile health clinic, and they have made efforts to go to our populated encampment sites to provide health care to individuals living unsheltered. They also stop at the Day Cafe regularly as well. Revive Recovery, so they operate our syringe service program. That's really a harm reduction program that also provides community education. And they also assist in our encampment cleanup efforts. So if there are any discarded syringes that are concerning or a hazard for us, we will contact Revive to go out and do a cleanup of those discarded syringes. Our 2 emergency shelters, so the Nashua Soup Kitchen and Shelter and Southern New Hampshire Rescue Mission, are really extremely crucial in assisting individuals with getting indoors and receiving emergency shelter and supports to get out of homelessness. Harbor Care, so they are the chair of our Greater Nashua Continuum of Care, and they have outreach workers that connect individuals to care and additional resources and housing. Greater Nashua Mental Health, in addition to the many supports that they offer our community, they do have a homeless outreach staff person that often goes out with us in conjunction with public health to do street outreach and really try to engage individuals with accepting services. United Way of Greater Nashua, so they have been able to provide some hygiene products, tents, sleeping bags, and just fill in some of the gaps that other community partners aren't able to provide funding for. The YMCA, they have been very generous and offered showering for some of our unhoused population because we know that's a critical need as well. And the Unitarian Universalist Church and New Fellowship Baptist Church. So both of these churches provided, they opened their doors to provide warming stations for our unsheltered population this past winter. So here at the Division of Public Health, we are working very hard to track all of our encampment sites. We have approximately 10 that are identified. These consist of tent sites, vehicle sheltering sites, and rough sleepers, which are individuals that are sleeping on the concrete, in parking lots, outdoors, completely unsheltered with no tents. We have counted approximately 33 individuals at these identified locations. That does not mean that that's a definitive number. We do know that there are individuals sheltering in vehicles across the city. We also know that there are individuals couch surfing. So this is likely an underrepresentation of the actual number of individuals experiencing homelessness in Nashua. We are conducting weekly outreach to these identified sites. And again, it's really housing-focused outreach. So we're trying to provide connections to supportive services that help individuals obtain and maintain housing. In an effort to address housing instability and homelessness, there are various meetings that the city officials participate in. Some of these are internal and some are external. So these include our internal city strategy on homelessness meeting, and this meeting consists of the various departments that were mentioned previously, working together to identify any challenges that we're experiencing and come up with solutions. We also have our city and partner agency encampment meeting. So this meeting consists of city officials as well as our outreach partners to update them on the encampment sites and the efforts that are being made at those sites. We have our Greater Nashua Continuum of Care meeting that occurs monthly. And the Greater Nashua Continuum of Care consists of city officials as well as our nonprofit partners that are working towards ending homelessness in our community. The Continuum of Care also has various subcommittees, and those subcommittees meet to discuss more specifics. So for example, we have a youth subcommittee that focuses on youth homelessness in the community and the needs that we have to address there. We also have the Governor's Council on Housing Stability. So myself and our welfare officer, Bob Mack, are committee members. We do attend this quarterly, and this is a statewide meeting. And then we have our United States Interagency Council on Homelessness Regional Advisory Meeting. So this is our federal partner that covers the region of New England and provides some guidance on best practices and things that could be implemented in our community. In an effort to organize the numerous efforts being made to address homelessness, various housing stability strategies have been implemented and more continue to be developed. Some examples of things that have been implemented so far include our strategic plan for addressing homelessness and housing stability. We have identified key roles within the city and responsibilities for those roles in terms of our reaction and response to housing instability. We've developed a response plan for persons experiencing homelessness. We've developed an encampment tracking and debris procedure. This really consists of tracking where our encampments are, who is living in those encampments and any needs that are identified. So again, safety hazards. Is the encampment located near power lines? Does the encampment have, again, sharps that have been discarded that need to be cleaned up? Is there significant debris? Is the encampment abandoned? Can we send people out to clean that up? Our encampment outreach notification procedure, so that really outlines identifying our encampments on private property or city property, and how do we respond to those. Dumpster and porta potty notification procedure, so again, determining when do we need to include these hygiene facilities at some of these encampment sites to minimize the risk of public health exposures to biohazardous material. And our extreme heat advisory encampment procedure, this is probably our most recent, with the extreme heat advisories that have been called by the Office of Emergency Management. We want to make sure that we're addressing the needs of our vulnerable population of unsheltered individuals living outside. So this really includes providing education on where the city's cooling stations are, as well as water and other resources. I would like to share some of our accomplishments. So again, developing the strategic plan and those encampment tracking procedures. There's been a lot of support from the Department of Public Works and their GIS specialists, so it is GIS tracking that we're doing internally to map where those encampments are, and we're looking for any trends. We did have some serious concerns with encampments that might be in more remote locations that are difficult to get to, especially for any encampments that require first responders to go out for support. So we wanted to make sure that our first responders are aware of how to get to encampments, where they are, and we're looking to trend, what are some hot spots and how can we engage folks from in those areas. We've also posted our application for the city's Housing Trust Fund. So we have a Housing Trust Fund committee that meets regularly, and we just closed our application cycle on July 15th. So we will be reviewing those applications, and again, the goal is to create more affordable housing in the city with those monies. We've drafted a racial and social equity toolkit through the Greater Nashua Continuum of Care. So again, we know that homelessness disproportionately impacts individuals with low income and individuals of different racial backgrounds and socioeconomic status. And we've created a Housing Services and Development City webpage. So this is one page where individuals can go to find different housing resources for landlords, tenants, as well as homeless resources in our community. The following community needs have been identified through direct feedback from constituents, individuals with lived experience or living experience right now, city employees, and our community partner organizations. More emergency low-burying sheltering capacity, and we need handicap accessible sheltering. We often have our older adult population where we're seeing trends growing in homelessness, individuals that are 50 years and older, for various needs, primarily being the inability to afford the cost of living, especially if a spouse may pass away. Individuals are left to support themselves on low fixed income. So we know that we do need more accessible sheltering capacity. We also need overnight warming for individuals in our winter months. Again, we're looking to preserve lives, and we know that at least right now, we've counted 33 individuals that are unsheltered. We know that that number is increased, and we need to address the needs of protecting them from the winter weather elements. A daytime resource center, so during the day, there's not really any place for individuals to go to drop in to do things such as their laundry, showering, or even just connecting with resources. As mentioned earlier, we do have the day cafe, but that closes at 9:30, so that leaves a gap in our community for where people can go. Of course, there's a need for more affordable housing. Overnight parking allowance, so again, we know that individuals are sheltering in their vehicles and they're susceptible to receiving parking tickets, and we don't have a location for individuals to safely remain in their vehicle where they can park overnight. Again, options for vehicle sheltering, and then storage for personal belongings. Often personal belongings are a barrier to people accessing different sheltering capacity. So for example, cooling stations. We've had days where it's been over 90 degrees. Individuals are fearful for leaving their personal belongings in an unattended encampment as they might be stolen, vandalized, or other things. So that will often prevent people from seeking refuge from the weather elements and other supports. This is just some data from this past winter. The city funded an overnight warming station. The purpose of this warming station was to allow individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness to have refuge from the winter weather elements. I would like to be clear, this was not a shelter. This was just a warming station where people could drop in. There were no beds or cots available. We did not have any weather-related deaths and likely can attribute this to having a place for individuals to come indoors while supervised to warm up in the winter months overnight. So we did operate the overnight warming station for 3 months between February and April of this year. Hours of operation were 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. daily. Average daily attendance was around 21 people, but we have had up to 33 individuals. And over the 3-month period, we did serve over 100 unique individuals. I have included some of the costs. So the staffing cost was over $89,000 for the 3 months. And these were trained staff. They were trained in working with individuals struggling with substance use disorder, as well as some mental health conditions, and of course, individuals experiencing homelessness. And we provided, it was a warming station, so we did provide some coffee and light refreshments. And we did have to assist with paying for the utilities of the space that was utilized at the Universalist Unitarian Church. So that was a little over $3,000. We also had some daytime sheltering options. So those were for 3 months as well. And this was at New Fellowship Baptist Church. The hours of operation were from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. daily. The average daily attendance was around 5 people. The feedback we received was the location was just too far away from other supportive services, such as the soup kitchen, the day cafe, and the library, where we know a lot of our unhoused population spends time. And this cost was a little over $1,000 for those 3 months, and that was for utilities. All right, and that concludes my presentation.
All right. Any burning questions from the committee? Alderman Tebow, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a bunch of questions, but I'm going to start with, I mean, this is, to be honest, this is the most frustrating issue I think I have in the city, is because I believe that in a country like ours, we should be able to solve every problem, and nowhere has this problem been solved, from California to here. And so it's frustrating because there's no magic wand to fix it. You know, I mean, we've thrown money at it. We've thrown different options out there. I don't think we're any better than we were a year ago. I honestly go out there and I see plenty of unsheltered. I think we have more than 33. I would bet my everything on it, that we have more unsheltered than 33 out there. So I guess my first question is, Manchester's taken a completely different approach. What are your thoughts on, and I'm not saying I'm pro that or con that, but I want to know what your thoughts are on what Manchester's been doing with their unsheltered.
So they've been doing a couple of things. Manchester does have a drop-in center, so that is something different that Nashua does not have, and it has been identified as a need because we do not have a daytime place for individuals to go in, connect with resources. They also have the new ordinance that's in place that's anti-camping and anti-sleeping in public. In terms of that, it's a little bit newer. I did see an article stating that they have already started issuing citations, but I think at this time, there's not enough information to determine, you know, is that helping them reduce homelessness? The federal guidance says that having ordinances like that do not, because criminalizing homelessness just perpetuates it for financial reasons. It will inhibit people's ability to get a job if they have that criminal background because they're not able to pay those citations. And then if you don't have a job, you can't obtain or maintain housing. So for that one, again, there's not enough information regarding Manchester specifically, but the federal guidance does suggest that criminalization is not the most effective approach to take in terms of reducing homelessness.
Follow up?
Yep.
So, you know, having a drop-in center is nice because, you know, obviously it helps, it kind of Band-Aids the situation, doesn't solve the situation or fix it. So if you had anything you could possibly have and you know that would fix the problem, what would that be?
I think it takes a multi-tier approach. Of course, the rapid development of more affordable housing. And it needs to be mixed income housing. I think that we also need to consider having temporary housing solutions. So again, we know that the sheltering capacity that the city currently has isn't enough for the current need, and it won't be enough for the growing need. So we need to have more emergency sheltering options as well. And again, it takes a lot of manpower to go out to the scattered encampment sites throughout the city. So if we had another place where people could either drop in or one central location for encampment sites, it would be more efficient to connect with that community and connect different resources with that community and engage them.
Just a comment. I mean, we throw a lot of resources at this, and you know, we're probably going to be asked to throw more resources. So, you know, obviously we're going to have to take a look at that. But I mean, I want to solve the problem. Obviously, it's not nothing we do is going to solve the problem. So, what is enough? What point do we get to? Is this is enough help, or this is not enough help? And I guess we're going to have to kind of figure that out as we decide on any proposal that comes before us to what we should do, what that next step is, and if something like drop-in center is something that is something that's happened in many communities and that seems to be a very big help, then that's probably the way we should go. If there's other things we might have to explore, that's something else. But it seems like, well, I look at the slides and there's resource after resource after resource, and yet we still have barriers to solving this issue. So it's concerning. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
I would note that if it's concerning and overwhelming for those of us who are watching it happen, then we really need to give credit to public health for working with people every day and trying to maintain that there is hope, there are solutions, and there are resources, even if they're few and far between. So we appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Alderman Wilshire?
Yes, thank you. This is truly one of the toughest issues we'll ever face as humans, is our fellow humans being unhoused, you know, in frigid weather, in hot weather. What is the likelihood that the partners that we've been using are going to continue to offer their services, UU Church and the New Fellow Church?
I guess that's why I'm here today, really to just try to figure out the best approach to take to this. So there was the slide that had the cost of operating these temporary warming stations, and it's really trying to decide as a community is the best approach to have these temporary availability options for people, or to have something that's, you know, year-round where people can again drop in and you know, receive the supports that they need and get out of the weather elements. So again, we have multiple cooling stations throughout the city. But it really changes depending on the day that we have a heat advisory. Just because different hours of operations, for example, the library is not open on Fridays, so that's not an option for a cooling station. If it's a holiday and City Hall is closed, then that will not be an option as well. So it's really trying to figure out the best approach to, you know, how we want to help the individuals that are unhoused and where we can help them do that.
Hello?
So I know that your efforts have made a difference. I know they have, because we haven't had any deaths in the city. So keep on what you're doing.
Thank you.
And come back to us when you need more help. And I think that's why you're here. I think that, you know, this is a big issue. It's not gonna stop. It's not gonna go away. So we need to figure out some kind of solutions, but I think what you're doing has saved lives. So thank you for that.
Thank you, and I agree. I think our primary concern right now is making sure that we have somewhere for individuals to go in the winter months, because winter's coming. And we know that, we've had snow in October before, so we really want to prepare and try to figure out how we want to respond as a city.
So I would just bring up some relatively recent history for the city. If we look at the housing, the unsheltered populations that the city faced, say, in the mid-'80s, you saw programs like Harbor Homes and the Soup Kitchen emerge to try to address those. And programs like the Gathering Place subsequently formed to create that community-based location where at least people knew where they could go to start and have different connections to city resources be made. And then also all the city social workers and case managers also knew where they could meet people and encounter them and engage them for their programs. And then the idea of shelter capacity definitely came up in the early 2000s, and Interfaith Hospitality Network had basically a roving location of churches that were providing shelter space on a monthly basis. And that ultimately, first it created Anne Marie House, and then I think ultimately that engaged Family Promise. So the struggle that we have today may be worse today than we've seen it, but it's not the first time that we've faced it. And a lot of the solutions that we're hearing tonight are things that have worked in the past. The Gathering Place used to be located right on Main Street, and it used to be a place for people to go to, that they built a lot of community connections. They had the ability to connect with Greater National Mental Health, which was at the time Community Council, with Harbor Homes, connect with housing, and connect with each other so they could internally share, hey, this is a place that has resources, or this is a place that's good. And you kind of need that credibility when you're dealing with people who are living on the streets, because they trust each other a lot more than they trust us or anybody sitting behind a desk. So those programs have worked, and they've built some of the organizations that we have taken for granted, I think, in my opinion, to this day, where programs like the Soup Kitchen have been steadily expanding while saying that they shouldn't exist. The Soup Kitchen consistently said we should be focusing on making sure that there aren't unsheltered people, not building bigger and bigger shelters. And the Soup Kitchen itself had to take the lead in becoming the biggest shelter to address the need. And consequently, they had to close the smaller site shelters that they had on Ash Street and Kinsley Street. And that contributed to less diversity of location. Like the family shelter space that was at Kinsley Street was essentially closed because there's such a need that you can't build any larger shelters without including families. But if you include families, then now those families are cohabitating with a lot of different programs. And more recently, we've seen a lot of programs, I would say within the last 5 or 6 years, fold up very quickly because they're overwhelmed. They're doing everything they can. You saw Harbor Homes close the Peggy Gilmore program, which was a respite center for people coming out of the hospital that needed temporary shelter stays. You saw the Safe Station program close, and the 12 beds that were available for people in active recovery that wouldn't be eligible to go to other shelter spaces, that closed. Even mobile crisis is scaled down. I don't know that its respite program is fully accessible to the community. And more recently, we saw Hearts close. Or not Hearts, I'm sorry. Hearts is doing great. I meant Stepping Stones. We saw Stepping Stones close very quickly, and the population that they were focusing on, trying to engage younger teenage and younger adult homeless so that they weren't part of the general shelter population, has struggled too. So I think what a lot of these organizations have consistently needed is leadership from the city. And we're seeing that start to emerge, where the city is recognizing that the scope of the problem is beyond the ability of different nonprofits full of people that are very well-intentioned, but each one trying to reinvent the fundraising wheel or apply for funding, do their golf tournaments and stuff, just to try to keep the doors open, ultimately resulting in heavily under-resourced but absolutely essential programs like the Soup Kitchen. So I think we're hearing a lot of really good ideas that have worked for Nashua before. We need to start committing this to action. And that's partly why we're meeting in joint convention tonight, and why I've invited Director Bagley to take a more active role in human affairs, so that as aldermen, we can actually provide tangible resources and political support when ideas are coming forward for things like warming stations, emergency shelters, drop-in programs. These are things where we should not be trying to reinvent the wheel when city staff are working on this day in and day out, and they're connecting with partners. I mean, we saw the list of meetings. I'm sure that's only the tip of the iceberg. And we need to listen to our staff and our programs and the organizations that support them when they say they need our help and they need our support and they need our confidence. One thing that I really wanted to ask about was a couple of slides earlier, you mentioned a resource guide that basically identified housing resources and that type of stuff. And I've seen some really good handouts that are basically palm cards or miniature brochures that can be handed out. Can some of that material be made available to aldermen so that when we have constituents who identify as unhoused, we can direct them intelligently into the resources and your programs that might help?
Absolutely. So that was the primary reason for creating the Housing Services and Development webpage. So it's on the city's webpage, and that does have different live links to click to that list the different resources in our community. And our Greater Nashua Continuum of Care did develop a resource toolkit that has resources for emergency sheltering, transitional sheltering, food security, and I'm missing one other thing. I think it might be healthcare on there. So absolutely, I can share that.
And it's important to remember that a lot of these programs that seem like they're unrelated or not part of the old solution, they could be the barrier that a person needs to get out of housing. And at the end of the day, you're not going to solve homelessness unless you help each person as they present with their unique needs. That's the only way to actually address it. There's no magic bullet. But if you have holistic programs and you gather together the people who might be struggling with, acute aging related issues, and you're able to refer them to BEAS and the different elderly housing programs, if you're able to keep them from becoming homeless in the first place and have the preventative programs, that's how you start to see those numbers go down. I work with a program called Nashua Veterans Promise, and we started a program last year where we're having the public sponsor hoodies that have it shows support on the back of different businesses that support veterans. On the front, it has an inspirational quote, but what it's really useful for is it has a QR code on the front that leads to a resource page. Is there a way to kind of replicate that because somebody asked me if I would just make another resource page, and the biggest problem with that is who's updating it. I know the toolkit is a great resource, which is, I think, updated at least annually, if not more often. But is there a way to create a graphic that people could use to make sure that anyone with a smartphone can use that to trace it down?
That's certainly something that I can bring back to our communication specialists at the Division of Public Health. We use QR codes for a lot of our events. It's been very helpful for people, and it's an easier way to access and not use so much paper. So
It's not a substitute for a drop-in center, because there's a lot of people who really need to talk to somebody and have them explain things, and they need to be able to check in if something doesn't work out. It's incredibly frustrating to have only a computer or a voicemail to leave something with. You have to be able to talk to someone and say, okay, I went here and that person didn't answer. I went here and that person didn't happen. I don't know what to do. And have somebody willing to stand there and say, well, then let's advocate. Let's try calling them again. Don't give up. Here's resources that might work. So I think that is a very important component. Are there any tangible plans for opening like a community center or expanding the actual capacity we've talked about?
I think right now we're just in the contemplation phase. We don't have any sites determined, and we have to kind of figure out all of the staffing needs. But it is something that we've been discussing, and we're hoping to continue to discuss. Again, it's something that I've received feedback from community members on, desired needs, and expanded sheltering capacity continues to come up.
I think from my own recollection of working on shelters and trying to find locations for new shelters and that type of thing, it is worth pointing out that we are in the process of decommissioning a school, one which we are concerned about whether or not people will try to clandestinely take shelter in. So, I mean, if there's anything I can do as alderman to try to connect those dots, at least for this winter, then I would love to. And then there are many, many facilities operated by the faith communities around Nashua. I don't know that they're an easy group to necessarily engage. We've had a number of good partners, but they're also the biggest and most visible. That's definitely not every church in Nashua.
Absolutely. And I think going back to, aside from just the location, we want to make sure that we have trained staff available. Because again, as we know, there's a lot of complexities around individuals that are experiencing homelessness. So we want to make sure that the staff are trained and prepared to assist individuals in any sheltering capacity.
I would expect that the staff training, engagement, and recruiting is probably one of the biggest challenges for anybody trying to run a residential program. Alderman Clements? Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think we need to do a better job as well on what we're doing here with different agencies. I had a gentleman reach out to me 7 days ago about his application at the Housing Authority. They lost his application 3 times. So he went there, he applied in person, submitted the application. Waited a couple weeks, didn't hear back. Called again, they didn't have it. He went down in person, filled it out again. 3rd time, called, no, we don't have it. Finally went down, and the woman found it under a pile of applications, he said. Now, whether or not this is true, I don't know, but this is what a constituent has reached out to me to tell me. So we need to do a better job with the resources that we have before we can go in and propose to do something as big as open up a shelter that's run by the city. We give a lot of money to the Housing Authority. The Housing Authority, I know, is backed up. They have a wait list that's thousands of people long. I get that. They're understaffed too. But I think what we need to do really is figure out what is it that will give us the most bang for our buck. My question really is if we have any statistics from the warming shelter that we had, we had somebody in there to connect people with resources. How many of the people that came into the shelter were connected with resources and ended up in a better situation than when they walked into that place? Do we have that statistic?
So the staffing at the resource center was a third party, and their primary goal was really just to supervise the individuals of the warming station. They were not providing case management. It is difficult to do overnight when a lot of the businesses are closed, but if it were a different model, that could certainly change, and it would really be more housing-focused navigation and connection to supports and services.
Yeah, I guess my point is what I would like to see if we're going to spend money is connecting people with the services that are out there and helping them help themselves. I think that part of the issue is that you have somebody like the gentleman who reached out to me who is trying to do that and is running into barriers that are created by the system itself. And that nothing to me is more frustrating than that. When somebody who clearly wants to better themselves, wants to reach out and get the help, and they can't do it. That's the problem that we need to fix. We need to figure that out. How we do that, I don't know. But to me, that's an obstacle that shouldn't exist, that unfortunately clearly does.
And I can speak to that just a little bit. So at the Division of Public Health, we do have community health workers, and their primary role is really to fill the gaps within our community safety net. So they do a lot of street outreach directly with our unhoused population, and they are that advocate, as Tom was speaking about earlier. So if there are issues with applying for housing or other services, our community health workers will call with constituents to try to help get access. They will try to figure out what other barriers are. I will say that a number of our unhoused population may not be eligible for Nashua housing or New Hampshire housing due to prior eviction histories. So just to give a quick case study, we have an individual that was living with their spouse who was disabled, and they had a voucher through the spouse. The spouse ended up dying, and the individual was unable to sustain the rent for their housing and now has an eviction on their record and now they're not eligible for subsidized housing or vouchers. So those are the type of people that, how do you help them? We have to try to foster relationships with landlords in the community, and that's something that our community health workers are doing to try to get through some of those barriers, because not everybody's eligible for subsidized housing. And unfortunately, there is some stigma. So New Hampshire doesn't have legislation around discriminating against rental payment sources. So some vouchers carry more of a stigma, as individuals are deemed as being a higher risk tenant due to the type of voucher they have. So for example, it might be a mental health voucher. So that's another barrier. So again, having community health workers and other people kind of help navigate through different landlords and services that might be available has been a benefit, and we have been able to get some people housed.
I see your hand up, and I would point out anecdotally, as was said, that even the National Housing Authority is a partner. So there may be some things that can't be formally said, but I would say anecdotally, I approached them multiple times last year when Monaghan Manor was opening and pointed out that there were people living in the shelters that were identifiable, locatable, and they did not make priority for any of them. Alderman Clemens?
Yeah, thank you. So on the other hand, I had another constituent reach out to me over the past week with a issue with a tenant who was squatting. And New Hampshire doesn't have very good laws either way in regards to those issues. And we just tend to have a lack of any law on either side of that issue. And so, I understand the stigma behind wanting to take something like a federal voucher, because you hear of situations like this, and I can only imagine owning property and having it be destroyed. Yeah, that would turn me away, especially if I didn't have the legal right to evict somebody, or it took months and months and months. So I think that and that's a problem in and of itself, right? Because if you have somebody that's illegal or they've damaged the property, but yet you can't kick them out, well, that means that there's somebody who would use that property, who would, abide by the rules, who's not getting a place now, right? So there has to be, I agree that there has to be solutions that are offered up at the state level as well. One of the other things I wish the state would do is allow cities and towns to put in rent control, because the rents in some of these places are out of control. And, if we had a system where the city could impose rent control, then we could prevent some of the things that are happening with the inflation going up on homes. So, yeah, I agree that there's a lot of stuff to be done. I think some of it, unfortunately, has to be done up in Concord. But some of it starts here in just how we treat people when they walk into an office to apply for assistance.
Alderman Senate?
Actually, if it's all right, I know Alderman Wilshire had her hand up, and she may have something relevant to the point with NHRA, so I'll let her go first.
Well, as you know, I am the liaison to the National Housing Authority. I go to all their meetings. I'm disappointed to hear that someone felt they were treated disrespected and their application was lost. One of the biggest issues is everything is so expensive. Even if you get people the services they need, even if you get somebody on their feet, housing first should be the model, right? Someone needs a stable place to live before you can treat them, because otherwise they're floundering out there. I don't know what we do about the high cost of rents, and landlords don't have to take Section 8 because they can raise their rent and get whatever they want, and it's frustrating. And I know people that have gotten Section 8 vouchers that lost them because they couldn't find a place to live. So I think they get like 6 months or something to lease a place, and if they don't, the voucher goes to the next guy on the list. Well, or they have to move out of town, move out of the state, and go somewhere else, if they're lucky enough to have a portable voucher, someplace where they can afford to live. Nashville's not that place. Nashville is so expensive right now that, I mean, I know my grandson, you know, he's got 2 roommates because rents are so high, you can't afford it. And he's got a fairly decent job. It's frustrating. I don't know how we fix this rent situation, but it's frustrating on a lot of levels.
Alderman Senate.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to go in a different direction, but I've got a lot of questions and comments, so please bear with me. I'm happy to have this presentation tonight because it at least seems responsive to what I feel was one of the big criticisms when I first got started on this board, which was that a lot of our actions that were being taken felt reactive rather than proactive. And so this feels like proactivity, and I'm glad to see this happening now while we're in August and we're dealing with some heat, but we have the access to cooling centers and things like that. And what I think I'm hearing is that there's likely an intent to seek funding and a location for something similar to the overnight warming station that we approved earlier this year. I actually pulled up the date. That meeting was January 24th of this year. Do you anticipate a proposal like that coming to us ahead of those cold winter months versus what I would consider at that point the dead of the winter?
Yes, that's the intent. We definitely want to have this planned out, funded, and prepared prior to the winter months.
All right, I'm glad to hear that, like I said, because that's an implementation that I think that's a good return on the investment for what it is, because as we've seen the past few weeks, summers are getting hotter, and the inverse of that is that the winters are going to get drastically colder, I feel. And those are not conditions where people need to be living outdoors. Again, to Alderman Wilshire's point, housing first. We need to make sure that when we're treating the unsheltered folks in our city, that we're treating them with decency and we're treating them with humanity, which is going to lead me to my next point, which will be a little on the nose, and I'm going to try to be as kind about it as I can, but I am the Ward 7 Alderman. Do you anticipate, of these 10 identified encampment sites that you're aware of, any encampment sites that would need to be cleared out for any reason in the coming months? And the reason I ask that is because of the situation that arose last fall with the encampment that needed to be cleared out of the railroad tracks and was very suddenly sprung upon a residential neighborhood that happens to fall in my ward.
I would say that in our internal city meetings, we have tried to determine areas that would be hazardous to have encampments in. So if there's any encampments that are reported in some of those areas, again, along power lines, in areas that would be, potential hazard, we're really having our community health workers be the face of our response, just because we know that sometimes people don't always respond well to law enforcement. So we're trying to consistently send out the same community health workers to do outreach to any sites and try to move people along to safer situations. But the primary goal is a permanent housing solution. Or if there is shelter space available, we'll try to redirect people there. There's a number of reasons why people may opt for taking shelter space. And, one of the ones that we hear, we have a lot of individuals that have pets, and sometimes we have individuals that are couples and they don't want to be separated. Those are just some of the reasons. There's more. So we're really trying to create that rapport with individuals and move them along to different alternatives, so they're not in any areas where there's hazard conditions or safety concerns.
Do you anticipate any of those mass migrations that need to be undertaken?
I don't think there would be any mass migrations. We don't have large numbers in our encampments. I think one of our biggest ones is around 10, 15 individuals, if that. And that's not in a hazardous area, so we're not anticipating having to clear that out anytime soon.
All right, well, thank you for being candid about that, just because, you know, again, it's a real fine line to toe there, and, you know, anytime you try to discuss that matter, it really does run the risk of coming off with an air of, we don't want these folks here, which I personally was not my perspective on that as that was happening. And the perspective of a lot of the folks that actually lived closest to that was concerned for the well-being and, you know, why we were just moving folks from one outdoor location to another outdoor location. Granted, the capacity of the beds was not what it needed to be. But, you know, just making sure that we're not creating a situation again where the worst possible scenarios are arising like it did last October with, you know, unfortunately, violence occurring as a result of heightened concerns and heightened passions. Moving on to, well, there are no happier subjects, but you had mentioned seeking some sort of overnight parking allowance, vehicle storage for people who are currently living out of their vehicles. I'm too personally aware of the small neighborhood that's cropping up in the back parking lot just to our west, the Amherst Walmart, and people who, it's basically their permanent address right now. I'm not quite even sure how to phrase it, but are there any identified sites where people who are unfortunately in this situation could potentially be located safely?
So these are discussions that we're having right now, just because we have identified the growing need for individuals that are sheltering in their vehicles and the lack of sheltering capacity elsewhere. I've been doing a lot of research on the topic and working with a regional advisor from the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. Some best practices and other things that have worked across the nation are to have, you know, multiple parking lots that separate individuals by demographics. So maybe, you know, single women would be in a parking lot and RVs would be in another parking lot. A lot of these municipalities utilize either city-owned parking lots or faith-based parking lots that have been donated. So there might be 5 spaces donated from a faith-based community. And there will be different stipulations for parking. Some lots that were recommended are kind of more stationary, where people can stay there day and night. And then there's other lots that, you know, you might just be able to park overnight. We do know that a lot of individuals with vehicles that are sheltering work. So maybe an overnight situation could work in this community. There's a lot of factors to take into place, such as snow removal. In different parking lot, you know, if we were to have multiple parking lots, you have to take into consideration what that organization's snow removal policy is and frequency, as well as, you know, some municipalities looked at where was the last registered address of that vehicle, and they would only service individuals that were registered in that municipality. So there's a lot of different factors to take into place, but these are discussions that we're having. We have not identified a site as of yet, and we're just still kind of talking through, is this something that the city's looking to do? We know that it's something that's been asked. We know that it's something that appears to be a need, and it's really just working through how much of a program would we want to make this, and how much supervision. And, you know, we want to be sure to not have too many barriers in place, because again, often the people sheltering in vehicles may have those eviction histories, they may have those criminal records, and how do we keep them and other parkers safe? So those are some discussions we're having right now.
Well, thank you for all the work that you're doing, and again, thank you for this presentation tonight. Like I said, proactivity is always, always, always going to be better than reactivity. So I'm glad to see signs that we're trying to get out ahead of this now versus trying to make knee-jerk decisions as they arise. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
It's also worth pointing out that a lot of the scenarios that were happening last year, for example, we don't have anybody, I believe, that thinks that institutionally it's a good idea to move all of the homeless people in one area so they can be better managed. I think that idea has been proven not effective. And we didn't move them to an area where an outside agency would come in and plan a massive construction tree chopping project where we suddenly had to respond to that. And maybe, because we don't have that particular crisis happening right now, your department can work a little more proactively and as you're doing now. Alderman Timmons, I know you had
Yes,
your hand up.
thank you, Chairman Lopez. I also get a lot of complaints from constituents. There's a camp that's growing behind Market Basket on Amherst Street. I don't know about the Walmart one, but I do know about the Market Basket ones because I'm always driving by. Because there's a petition that's going on right now to have them removed because they feel, the constituents feel that no one is doing anything from the city. So I'm very thankful for this information because I get called all the time. What is the city doing? And one of the things about this particular encampment is they seem to have really nice tents. That's number one. There's children there, but there is cars there that's not licensed. They're just there. I talked to Director Bagley once about it, and I think she sent someone over there. But it have grown in the last 2 weeks, and the petition is getting bigger. So what is your take on probably getting a petition, that we would get a petition saying we want those people to be moved because they irritate? And by the way, you can't see them from Amherst Street. You actually have to go behind Market Basket to see them. So what is your views about
Somebody did
that?
the work to find this site, and they are critical of them having too nice a tent while they're homeless. Good luck.
So I believe I'm familiar with this site, and I go out regularly with Director Bagley. There are no tents. It's just vehicle sheltering. And again, we're at a place where do we send people that are sheltering in their vehicles? As of right now, we don't have a location to do that. And if we follow regular protocols that you would follow for anyone that has a car parked on the street, overnight they're receiving tickets, they get to the point where they're going to be towed. Well, now this person has even less of a shelter because their vehicle has been towed and now they're living unsheltered outdoors. So it just creates additional problems. Again, sometimes people are using their vehicles to get to work. We do have some individuals that are working, so that'll take away their transportation piece and their ability to earn income if they're not able to get to work effectively. So again, these are just discussions that we are having, and we're trying to come up with solutions that would make everybody in the community feel safe, because the individuals that are sheltering in their vehicles are constituents as well, and we want to make sure that they're treated ethically and morally. And as of right now, unfortunately, we don't have the sheltering capacity to address the need, which is another reason that I'm here.
Can I
So it seemed,
follow up
oh,
on
you
that?
can follow, go ahead.
Yeah, they are there with tents, because I just took pictures. And I take pictures all the time, so they may not have been there when you were there, but yes, they are there. Because I go there I just live not too far from there. They don't bother anyone. I don't see that.
There's 2 Market Baskets on Amherst Street.
I'm talking about the one that's close to going towards Walmart. I don't know which one you're referring to. The second, the smaller one, not the big one, the smaller one. That's in the plaza where the liquor store.
Northwest
That-
Plaza.
What's the name of this? Yeah. Okay. Have you seen that, Tyler?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
So
it would certainly be a good
my
idea
thing
for any
is-
of us who are being approached by these constituents to pass this on so that there's clear information and we're able to make sure that,
But I'm glad that we have something I can speak on now, because you have this slide that we are doing something. We just not closing our eyes because you guys are not doing anything. And I'm very thankful for this presentation.
Thank you.
So thank you.
go ahead, Alderman Clee.
Thank you.
Alderman Tebow, you're next.
My
Stop
hand
the
was
clock.
up, but I'm
Oh,
good.
no.
I don't want to talk about it. I'm good. I already asked my questions.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Presentation was great, thank you so much. And I actually just really have more of a comment than questions. And I'm on the planning board, and I listen to all the great work that you guys are doing. And on the planning board this past week, we had the Maynard homes that came in. And when I look at it holistically as to what the National Housing Authority is doing, Maynard Homes, and Maynard Homes isn't just building more homes. They're building more homes that look at things as, for lack of a better term, I'll call it graduation of AMI. So it's not just someone who's coming in that needs housing, but those that go in there as their income graduates from maybe 20%, 30%, 40%, 50% AMI, they can stay there. They're just going to pay more rent. So as they get better in life, they can stay there. So that's a wonderful thing. So as you're helping people along, they can stay at home and don't have to go somewhere else. So I see what you're doing to help people and something like Made at Home. So I would love to see something where we can transition them to a place such as Maynard Homes, where they don't have to keep moving around, and now they kind of ink them out, for lack of a better term. So that's what I would love to see us do. Because I can't, I mean, when I was first brought into this world, we started in the projects of Holyoke, Massachusetts, and we kind of incomed out. So then we went back to Chicopee, where I kind of grew up in a farming kind of location. So it was kind of hard to have to transition to, actually it was kind of a lower life than living in the project. So it's kind of a hard transition for people to have to do. I can't imagine what it would be like now, where you're kind of on that cusp, where you no longer qualify for something like that. So to be able to get people to go from where they have nothing to where they have something, they could end up with nothing if we don't have something like Maynard Homes that would help them. So, you know, something that the Housing Authority is doing and something you're doing, working together, is really important. So I hope that we keep doing something like this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Who am I missing?
Tyler,
Oh, I'm sorry, you're the backup.
Tyler.
Alderman Gouvet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So thank you very much for bringing the information forward. I think this is important to be able to get out to our residents of what the city is doing. The question that I really have when looking at how we advance kind of the project here and how the city goes forward is, what is the balancing act between providing the best level services for that population we possibly can in the city without attracting from other surrounding areas to just increase that population inside of our city?
It's a good question. I would say there's a couple of things we have to look at. One, we know that we have the problem right now, and we know that we're not meeting the need right now. So for me, it would be really addressing the needs of the people that are already here. That would be the priority. And I think, again, just working regionally with our partners. So making sure that kind of in terms of policy and services that are available, just being able to have connections with our community partners in our neighboring communities such as Manchester, Concord, and any neighboring community, and trying to have a uniform response to how we're all handling housing issues and homelessness. So I think that's the key part, is we can't do this on our own. We really have to collaborate with our neighboring communities, because again, we don't want to, we're already not meeting the need. So we certainly don't want to attract more people that we can't assist, but people need assistance regardless of wherever they are. So we really want to focus on that collaboration piece, and that's something that I'm actively working towards.
Thank you.
Alderman Clemens,
Thank you.
whom I saw myself and didn't need assistance.
So, I don't think this is I don't know the viability of this, but, and this person took it upon themselves. So I have a summer place up in Meredith, New Hampshire, and, I always found it odd that every night there's a bus that goes from, Meredith, New Hampshire to Berlin, New Hampshire. And it's long drive in a bus, because it stops in North Conway. I want to say it's like an hour and a half, maybe 2-hour ride on the bus each way. So 2 hours down, 2 hours up. I always thought that was weird. And I you know, we have a few places that we like, and I got to know a waitress there, and, you know, my wife and I were friendly with, and she was telling me that she lives in Berlin, New Hampshire, and she takes the bus every day to get to work. And the reason that she lives in Berlin is because it's cheaper. She took her Section 8 housing, and she lives up there. And she's from Nashua, originally. Now, I don't know who or how or why, she got connected with that, or how, but like, the thought of yes, we need to connect our resources with other communities in the state, I think is absolutely true. And that's not gonna be the solution for everybody, but I think it shows at least some creativity on somebody's part that helped this person out. And to be honest with you, she can't be the only one doing it, because this bus gets, I don't know, 10, 15 people waiting for it every night. So it's enough that it's in business and doing a business. So, there are other areas in the state that are less expensive to live. And I know that that's not a permanent solution, because we want people to be here in Nashua. But we have to do something in the immediate term to help people. And I don't know what that is, because you can't, a building takes time to put up, right? It takes time for somebody to design it. It takes time for somebody to excavate the site. It takes time for somebody to get the construction crew in there and build it. And by then, it's 2 or 3 years down the line. This is not going to be solved overnight. Even a renovation project takes time. So we need to do things in the meantime, and I hope, I'm hopeful that we're working on that. But I do think that, to the point of, yes, we need to have other folks, or other communities involved. Yeah, I agree with that. But I'm also concerned about that too, because you have Manchester, who enacted a no camping ordinance, and now all of a sudden, as Alderman at Large Timmons is saying, now we're finding new encampments here in Nashua, and it makes me wonder, are these people coming from Manchester because they're kicking them off the streets up there? So, and maybe that's working great for the people up in Manchester who don't want to deal with that problem, so they're sending the problem here. I don't know what the final answer is, but we have to have some lines in the sand that, we're not going to tolerate certain things, and where that line is, I don't know. But I guess it's frustrating to know that that there are folks complaining about certain behavior, and it's not being addressed in a way that they want it to be. So, I don't know what the solution is, but we can't have people camping overnight in very public places, unfortunately.
The point just made, is HMIS used in the outreach encampments?
Yes, so we are entering individuals that we encounter into HMIS. And to speak to the concerns about people migrating from Manchester, we have been tracking data on where individuals in the encampments, where they were previously living. The majority are from Nashua. We do have a number of individuals coming from out of state. So we have not seen an influx of individuals from Manchester. I was just in a meeting with one of the HMIS administrators, and the data that they polled showed that the majority of people that had been homeless in Manchester are still currently receiving services in Manchester. So we do have that data. Again, the ordinance is pretty new, so we're going to continue to track that and look at that. But as of right now, there's no signs of of an influx from Manchester specifically.
As an anecdote, which I'm sure will reassure Alderman Clemens, I took the bus to Manchester a couple of weeks ago because we have a direct bus that goes to Manchester. And while I was waiting in the park, I was talking to some of the people that were there, and they were clients of the Soup Kitchen probably 8 years ago. And so not everybody who identifies being from Manchester was originally from Manchester. The population is very transit by its nature and kind of moves around the state. Alderman Wilshire?
Thank you. So I just, for those of you who don't know what HMIS is, it's the Housing Management Information System, and it's used by the nonprofits or anyone else who comes into contact with homeless or unsheltered people. And, you know, they're entered into that system, and that's what that HMIS is all about. I know it's an acronym that not everybody knew. I just want to mention that the Bronstein and Maynard homes. The Housing Authority is really trying to tackle their waiting list. They are. I mean, Bronstein went from 48 units to 216 units. That's huge. Mm-hmm. And Maynard Homes is going from 110 units to 275 units. So we've gained from the National Housing and Redevelopment Authority over 300 units of affordable housing. I wish that other, you know, agencies would step up. I know that there's a new project on Main Street. I'm not sure who's doing that. It might be Southern New Hampshire Services.
NeighborWorks, you mean the one?
Yep. NeighborWorks, yeah. Okay, NeighborWorks. But we need more developments like that. I mean, 333 units just from one agency is pretty impressive. If we could duplicate that with other agencies, we'd be in a lot better place. That's all.
To President Wilshire's point, it's one of the least dramatic or impressive ways the city helps, but the city has been very helpful administratively and creatively helping fund some of these development projects. So, I mean, we're never gonna, there's always gonna be a demand to the alderman, you need to do more, and we do. But that doesn't mean that all of the things that we're doing are obvious, because some of it started 3 years ago, 4 years ago, even longer, and some of it is so convoluted that you would never really put it together, except that there are city staff members who really are trying to tackle this problem. And when they have those interagency or those interdepartmental meetings, they come up with things like, well, what's the Housing Trust Fund doing? And what about using this to help with that? And so there is a holistic citywide effort as far as the departments are concerned. And it's my impression they're just getting more and more savvy about it, and they're learning new strategies every year. So I just want to give you credit for that. Are there any further comments? Anybody has their hands up? You should probably thump your.
No.
Okay. I would like to thank my seeing eye clerk for helping me spot everybody. And I would like to thank you for presenting to us and giving us all this information, answering our questions. Like I said earlier in the meeting, I think it would be very helpful to have more regular updates so we don't bombard you with a million questions. Sure. And I would definitely invite other aldermen who aren't immediately on the Human Affairs Committee to monitor for any times we're able to get information or have agency providers here to give us information, because it's very useful to us as aldermen, especially in the coming months where it's going to get colder and colder. We're going to have questions we don't know how to answer, and we're going to need to know how to point them to the people who do. So thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
And thank you for all this
Thank you for having me.
Communications?
There are none.
Unfinished business?
None.
New business resolutions?
None.
New business ordinances?
None.
Tabling committee?
There is none.
General discussion? Seeing
No
none.
hands.
Public comment? Public is invited to speak. Please
Yep.
come up, make your comments.
I have a comment.
I think Mr. Keating came first, but you can be second.
Once again, thanks for the opportunity to speak, and appreciate the deep questions and listening. And with the time, I just want to make a couple of contextual pictures and some personal stories just to highlight some things that when our first count for homelessness, we had a count of over 800. So despite what we're hearing, that has dramatically changed over the period of time. So that's that is what we have done. And I'm always marked by a fellow who managed the HMIO system for years from Harbor Care when we put together the plan to end homelessness in our community, which was signed 20 years ago in this past June. We had it up at that point, it was very early on in the technology. You could see the screen and it was going on. And he looked up at it and he had a funny sense of his being, Alderman Tom Lopez knows him very well. And he said, "Oh, homelessness bad, housing good."
Sounds like Miles.
And that's, huh?
Sounds like Miles.
Yes, that was Miles. And that really is the essence of it. We know what to do. And in this community, day after day, we manage to help people. And programs that the new wave, and it's not the first time this happened, of criminalization is a false economic, let alone the moral and economics of it, is that a person just doesn't disappear from it. They show up in some other place. And here's a concrete story. Yesterday, a man in his 30s, I looked at him and he had a bruise under his eye, and clearly something happened. And I asked him, what happened? He said he had been jumped. They took his backpack, and they took some money. He had his licensed next to him, so he managed to preserve that. But he had been at the hospital. So there was an ER visit. He has multiple chronic illnesses, and you see that again and again. And when they had looked at the cost, that the cost for a homeless person doesn't stop at hospitalization. There's jails that occurs. So it happens again and again. So breaking up a place doesn't change that fact of it. And two other stories to finish it up. On the positive side, I know this woman, late 60s. She slept most of the time at the day cafe out front, and we closed the day cafe out front because of community concerns. There was loitering. We didn't have that as a standard, and it was to sleep overnight, but there was enough pressure. We had to close the bathrooms because people got concerned that there were needles in it. But this woman slept on the cement for most of this winter. She did go into the warming station for a period of time. She was briefly in the shelter. The health department they did their outreach, looked like they were going to be able to get her placed, and then it turned out that she had previous eviction from HUD voucher, so she couldn't. But they found a place for her. And that's the health department, which is a very significant change over the years been here. The health department is the outreach effort. I'm just sort of amazed. They're here, they're there, and they're doing it. This woman has a place now. And today I was looking at it, I saw it before, but she was showing it to somebody. She has a kitty cat. She has a cat. She has a home. And that's what happened. So it's incredible what the efforts have done. And that's good for her, it's good for the community, it's good for the economics. That's really what it's all about. And we know how to do it. It's just, as a nation, for the longest period of time, we stopped building public housing. The Housing Authority is not public housing, the new Moynihan Manor and what Man's Drive. It is not. It's a complicated process that produces affordable housing, but it is not, because it's against the law to do public housing. Against the law to add. So just think of this woman, she's got a kitty cat, she's got a home, she smiles, and it's the difference. And that's to the credit of this community overall, the active stance taken over years and years, over boards after boards after boards after boards. And it has made a difference. And many of the people remain are the people who are the most challenged amongst the most challenged. That's, that's where it is. So thank you again. I know there'll be more, and just all the time you're given to so many things, including tonight on this. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
Ms. Hannon?
Hello again.
Just restate your name and address for us.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's Jessica Hannon Vitale, and I live at the shelter on 35 Spring Street. I just wanted to hit on the subject of, I heard about the school closing, and since it was just closed, it's obviously not in a huge need of renovation at this point, I'm assuming, right? Is there any way that we could even temporarily house some people, maybe make that our winter solution? Because it's just a huge building with a bunch of space, and if you line that with cots or anything, I heard that there's like a kitchen in there and everything for economic classes. I think that would be a huge saver for a lot of people that are on the streets right now, honestly. Like, you could fit so many people in there. I will say the people that are sheltered, the people that I am sheltered with, most of them have jobs. Most of them want to get out of there, and they feel confident enough to try to get out of there because they have the beginning section of having shelter. They're getting the resources that they need, most of them. Some people just simply don't know where to look for the resources, which I'm trying to work with the shelter to get more pamphlets out, more signage for the people that live there, and I can help within there because everybody talks to me there. Nobody sees me as someone that works there. They see me as someone that's exactly them, because that's exactly what it is. Doesn't matter why I'm there just like everybody else. So I have a really good reputation amongst a lot of people in the shelter. I feed them all the time. They love me there. I was also going to also let you guys know that I do plan on working with Nashua Soup Kitchen to try to do a food drive because they are low on food and everything. So I am going to try to set up a couple different ways, like benefits in a way. You know what I mean? Like, I had an idea of a walk for Brielle, which is my daughter or whatever, just in her name, you know what I mean? To get more, I feel like it wouldn't just be on the homelessness. It would be anybody that has problems with domestic violence. It would be anybody that has problems with people abusing children. It'd be people that have families that understand sometimes life happens and we're not prepared for it sometimes, and anybody can be in this situation. I really do feel very motivated about making changes, and I'm literally just starting with Nashua because you guys are the ones that took me in. But I do plan on trying to make it state level and to try to see if we can't change some of those laws that landlords have against being so discriminatory about who they let in, and see if we can't regulate that a little bit more. So you will be probably seeing a lot more of me, honestly. But I just wanted to let you know that there are littler things happening, not just the huge picture. There's so many little pieces in there too that I'm trying to help with as well, because it is a huge scope of a picture. So I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. The people in shelters are doing a lot better. Most of them are, like, even someone the other day, this woman, Melissa, that's there, she literally had a job interview. She was so nervous because her shoes were beat up. She's caring about how a job interviewer is going to look at her because of her shoes. So I went out to the store. I don't have money, but I spent what little money I had on shoes because I'm like, man, what is just a pair of shoes for one person is a life changer for another person. And she got that job. She felt confident, she got that job, and that could lead to so many different avenues for her. It just starts with the confidence, and having a place to go starts building that confidence. So that's all I wanted to add. I just want to let you guys know you'll be seeing me more, so. But thank you so much for your
Looking
time.
forward to it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I spent probably 15 years handing out boots and shoes at the soup kitchen, so it really does make a difference. You'd be surprised at the simple things. Remarks by Alderman? Anybody got their hands up? Alderman Clee, sorry.
Just to the last speaker, I'm going to tell you that when I went up to the State House, I was a state rep up there, I couldn't afford the clothes to go up there. I used to go to Goodwill.
Right.
They have some great clothes there, really inexpensive, and certain days have different color tags, and you can get some great things, including shoes.
Right.
And I bought a lot of things, including this.
Right, well, that's
So,
what
yeah.
Yes, so I've been trying to tell
Yeah,
people that too.
do that,
Don't have
and
vehicles, I don't mind
no.
going. Every time I leave, I'm asking
Yeah.
whoever I see, you need anything, I'm going to the store.
And we have some great shops downtown too, so.
Yep, oh yeah, the Green Nun I've seen, and,
The
there's
lucky
Savers.
dog and savers and so on. So
Alderman
I
Clee,
appreciate that.
sorry.
please stop engaging the audience.
I'm sorry,
okay.
I had.
I am the chair, so I'm trying to,
Idea.
this needs to be your final one, because we do have to kind of maintain
Yes, of
order.
course,
Okay.
This is way too long.
Yep.
But one final idea, I went to a meeting a couple days ago at the church to discuss this problem. And someone had brought up a point that a lot of homeless people are bothering people at the restaurants on Main Street because everybody's sitting outside and eating. And someone had brought up a point, is there any way we can come up with maybe even little cards like that have resources like the soup kitchen for the waitresses to hand out? Because some people just don't have that information.
I think most of us would definitely be eager to talk with you after the meeting, because you have a lot of great ideas, and maybe we can share some of what's being done.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Any other comments from the aldermans? Alderman Timmons?
I just want to point out that the Health Committee meeting usually take place on the second Wednesday of the month is now moved to the 21st of August at the same time, same location, which is City Hall.
All right. For myself, I just, is there another comment? Oh, sorry, I thought I heard a noise. I just want to remark upon the accident we had last week involving Phil Mello. I know a lot of people are concerned for him. My understanding is he's still fighting. Phil has been through a lot in his life, and I say it's best to just never count him out. My thoughts go out to his family, his friends, everybody who's supporting him, and his healthcare team. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And we are adjourned at 8:37 PM.